Chosen one. This moment was arranged long before you became aware of it. You didn't scroll into this message by accident. Something unseen guided your attention here, like a quiet hand on your shoulder in the middle of spiritual noise. There has been a heaviness following you lately, a sense that something almost happened, something you were this close to stepping into. Confusion, relief, grief without a clear loss. And underneath it all, a question you haven't said out loud. Why was I stopped when I was so sure I was moving forward? Chosen one, you've been walking through shadows with light still inside you. You felt delayed, blocked, even rejected. But your spirit knew better. There was an investigation happening behind the veil. Heaven was watching paths you couldn't see, futures you were praying into that looked right on the surface but carried danger in their foundations. And chosen one, before we go deeper, pause for a moment, hit subscribe, and comment "I receive" if your spirit is already responding. Because this message is about to speak directly to you, not randomly, not generally, but personally. There were battles you survived that never announced themselves as battles. Conversations that didn't happen. Doors that shut without explanation. A sudden ending that felt unfair but strangely quiet afterward. That wasn't coincidence. That was intervention. You were being pulled out of a timeline that would have drained your spirit, blurred your calling, and made you question who you really are. What felt like loss was actually mercy wrapped in mystery. Chosen one, you weren't weak for wanting that future. You weren't foolish for believing in it, but it wasn't aligned with the version of you that heaven is protecting. You escaped something that looked promising but carried long-term harm, spiritually, emotionally, even physically. The redirection wasn't loud because panic would have pulled you back, so it was subtle, gentle, final. This message arrives now because your soul is ready to understand what your mind couldn't then. The fog is lifting, recognition is replacing confusion, and in just a moment, a hidden truth is about to rise into clarity. One that will validate every unanswered why you've carried. Chosen one. There are dreams that don't arrive to be fulfilled. They arrive to be recognized. And this truth is delicate because for so long you believed that if something inspired you, if it lit you up, if it felt meaningful, it must have been safe. But spiritual maturity begins when you understand this. Not every beautiful future is a secure one, and not every open door is an invitation to stay. Some of the dreams you held weren't illusions. They were tests of discernment. They looked aligned. They carried promise, excitement, even a sense of divine approval. You could picture yourself there. You planned for it. You emotionally moved into it before your body ever did. And that's why the ending hurt the way it did. But chosen one, beneath the glow of that future, there were cracks forming that you couldn't see yet. Have you noticed how certain paths feel exciting, but never peaceful? How some visions energize the mind but quietly exhaust the soul? That's how unsafe futures disguise themselves. They don't arrive with alarms. They arrive with applause. They make you feel chosen, needed, validated. And for someone with a calling like yours, that kind of attention can feel like destiny speaking. But heaven sees what excitement hides. It sees the instability behind the image, the compromises that would have been required, the slow erosion of your intuition, the way that future would have demanded more of you than it would ever give back. And because you are a chosen one, you are often presented with almost right paths, close enough to feel holy but misaligned enough to be dangerous over time. Let me ask you something gently. Have you ever wanted something so badly that you ignored how unsafe it made you feel? Have you ever called anxiety anticipation just to stay hopeful? That wasn't weakness. That was a sensitive soul trying to trust what looked like light. Some dreams are mirrors, not destinations. They show you what you desire, not what you're meant to endure. They reveal your hunger for purpose, love, impact. But they are not where those needs are meant to be met. And when those dreams collapse, it's not because they were fake, it's because they were incomplete. Chosen one, danger rarely announces itself as danger when you're spiritually gifted. It comes dressed as opportunity, as timing, as this makes sense now. But alignment has a signature. It feels stable, even when it stretches you. If a future constantly required you to override your intuition, justify discomfort, or silence your inner voice, it was not sent to keep you safe. And here is the quiet relief hidden inside this truth. You didn't lose that dream because you weren't worthy. You were removed because you were too valuable to place in something unstable. What you were spared from would have cost you pieces of yourself you cannot afford to lose. So if part of you still wonders, what if I had stayed? What if I had tried harder? Let that question rest now. You didn't walk away from destiny. Destiny stepped in front of you and said, not this way. And as we move forward, ask yourself this. What if the safest future isn't the loudest one, but the one that doesn't require you to abandon yourself to survive it? Chosen one, there comes a moment in every spiritually sensitive life when desire begins to speak louder than discernment. Not because intuition disappears, it never does, but because the heart becomes so invested that it asks the soul to whisper instead of warn. And this moment is tender. It's not a failure of wisdom. It's the human longing to finally arrive somewhere that feels meaningful, safe, or seen. You didn't ignore your intuition because you were careless. You quieted it because you wanted to believe. You wanted the story to work, the timing to be right, the signs to align the way you hoped they would. And when longing grows strong enough, it doesn't silence intuition completely. It reframes it. What once felt like a warning begins to sound like fear. What once felt like hesitation begins to look like self-doubt. And slowly, urgency replaces alignment. Have you noticed how intuition speaks calmly, but desire speaks with intensity? Intuition doesn't rush you, it grounds you. Desire, when unchecked, pulls you forward with momentum that feels like destiny, but leaves your nervous system restless. And for chosen ones, this confusion happens often because your heart is expansive. You feel deeply. You see potential where others see limits. That's a gift. But without balance, it can lead you to override your own inner knowing. There were moments when your body reacted before your mind could explain why. Tightness in the chest, a heaviness after certain conversations, a sense of relief when plans were delayed, followed by guilt for feeling that relief at all. Those were not mixed signals. They were clarity trying to break through emotional attachment. But attachment has weight, and it presses against intuition until intuition feels inconvenient. Let me ask you something softly. Have you ever prayed for confirmation while secretly hoping the answer would match what you already wanted? Have you ever rushed a decision because slowing down felt like you might lose the opportunity altogether? That's how urgency disguises itself as divine timing. It creates the illusion that if you don't move now, you'll miss everything. When in truth, what is meant for you does not require panic to be secured. Chosen one, there is no shame in wanting. Desire is not the enemy of spirituality. It becomes dangerous only when it demands silence from your inner voice. And healing doesn't come from judging yourself for past choices. It comes from meeting that version of you with compassion. The version that was tired of waiting. The version that wanted proof that good things could happen without struggle. When desire overrides intuition, it's often because the soul is exhausted. Exhausted from being patient. Exhausted from being strong. Exhausted from trusting unseen timing. And heaven knows this. That's why redirection comes gently for chosen ones. Not as punishment, but as protection. Now that you're aware, something powerful shifts. You don't need to replay the past to learn the lesson. You simply carry it forward with grace. You learn to ask different questions. Does this feel steady? Does this allow me to stay connected to myself? Does peace remain even when excitement fades? Because alignment doesn't demand urgency. It invites presence. And the future that is truly meant for you will not require you to silence your intuition to enter it. It will honor it. So as we move ahead, sit with this truth. Your intuition never betrayed you. It waited patiently for the moment you were ready to listen again. Chosen one, slow your breath for a moment. This part of the journey was never meant to be rushed because the warnings you received were never loud. They didn't arrive as panic or catastrophe. They arrived quietly, so quietly that you could almost mistake them for mood, coincidence, or overthinking. And yet they were precise, gentle, consistent. Heaven was speaking in a language only a sensitive soul could hear. Think back to the moments that made no logical sense. The pause before you answered a message. The hesitation before saying yes. The subtle discomfort that appeared even when everything looked right. Those were not flaws in your confidence. Those were signals. Warnings rarely shout when you're chosen. They whisper because shouting would frighten you into resistance. Whispers invite awareness instead of fear. There were delays that felt inconvenient but strangely relieving. Plans that kept shifting. Doors that opened halfway and then stalled. You might have called it bad timing or assumed you needed to try harder. But chosen one, timing doesn't stutter without reason. When something is truly aligned, it moves with a quiet steadiness. When it isn't, reality itself begins to hesitate on your behalf. Have you noticed how your body responded before your mind could explain why? The tightening in your stomach, the heaviness that lingered after certain conversations, the exhaustion that followed moments you were supposed to feel excited about. Those reactions weren't emotional weakness, they were spiritual intelligence. Your body was translating what your soul already knew. Sometimes the warnings came as uneasy confirmations. You got what you asked for, but it didn't bring peace. The answer arrived, but joy didn't follow. Instead, there was a sense of being watched, investigated, weighed. That's because the path itself was being examined, not by you, but by something greater, something protective. Heaven doesn't just guide you toward things, it also quietly pulls you away from what cannot hold you. Let me ask you this. How many times did you feel unsettled but continued anyway because you didn't want to disappoint someone, or lose momentum, or appear ungrateful? How often did you override a soft inner no with a rational explanation? Those moments didn't disqualify you. They documented your humanity, and even then, protection remained active. Here is what you need to hear clearly now. Even the warnings you ignored still counted. You don't miss divine protection because you hesitated, doubted, or pushed forward briefly. Grace adjusts. Protection reroutes. When you are chosen, safety does not depend on perfection, it depends on purpose. That's why the ending came when it did. Not too early, not too late. Right at the moment where staying would have required you to disconnect from yourself completely. The whispers you overlooked earlier gathered together and became a final redirection. Quiet, firm, undeniable. So release the guilt, release the replaying. You were not reckless. You were learning discernment in real time, and now something has shifted. You hear more clearly. You trust the pause. You respect the hesitation. And as we move forward, carry this with you. The voice that warned you before is still with you now. Only this time you recognize its tone. Chosen one. There are rescues that don't feel heroic in the moment. They don't arrive with celebration or clarity. They arrive as interruption, as confusion, as an ending you didn't prepare your heart for. And because it didn't look like salvation, you questioned it. But what if what stopped you wasn't resistance? It was precision? Redirection is often misunderstood because we're taught to associate progress with movement and favor with continuity. So when something ends suddenly, when momentum breaks, when plans dissolve without explanation, the mind calls it failure. But heaven does not rescue loudly when you're emotionally attached. It rescues quietly so you won't fight the very thing saving you. Think about how it happened. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just final. A door that wouldn't reopen, a connection that faded without conflict, a path that lost its energy overnight. That wasn't punishment. That was a careful extraction. You were being removed before deeper attachment formed, before damage became permanent. Have you noticed how the redirection didn't humiliate you? It didn't destroy your identity. It didn't expose you publicly. It simply ended. That's intentional. If heaven had revealed everything you were being saved from, fear might have pulled you back into it. So instead, you were spared the details and given distance. Chosen one, what felt like being pushed back was actually being pulled out of a future that would have slowly demanded compromises you were never meant to make, out of an environment that would have required you to shrink your intuition to survive. out of a version of life that looked successful but felt unsafe to your spirit. Let me ask you something honestly. Didn't you feel a strange calm beneath the grief? Didn't part of you feel relief even while mourning? That wasn't confusion. That was your soul recognizing safety before your mind could catch up. When rescue is precise, the nervous system exhales before the heart understands why. Heaven intervenes gently with chosen ones because force would create trauma. You weren't dragged away. You were released. And release doesn't mean you weren't capable of staying. It means staying would have cost you more than leaving ever could. The pause that followed wasn't emptiness. It was recalibration. Space had to be created so your spirit could reorient itself without influence, pressure, or persuasion. Silence wasn't abandonment. It was protection settling in. You may still ask, why now? Why like this? But timing matters. If the redirection had come earlier, you wouldn't have believed it. If it came later, it would have hurt more. Heaven chose the moment where pain could still become wisdom instead of damage. So don't frame this chapter as delay. Frame it as deliverance. You didn't fall behind. You were lifted out of something that couldn't sustain the future version of you. And as you stand here now, quieter, clearer, more aware, ask yourself this. What if the greatest proof of divine care isn't what you were given, but what you were gently taken away from? Chosen one. There is a kind of grief that doesn't come from loss you can point to, but from futures you already lived inside your heart. And this grief is often misunderstood, even by the one carrying it. You tell yourself to be grateful, to move on, to see the blessing. But protection does not cancel pain, and wisdom does not erase mourning. You are allowed to grieve what never happened because it mattered to you. You didn't just lose a plan. You lost a version of yourself you had already begun becoming. The mornings you imagined, the conversations you rehearsed, the peace you hoped would finally arrive once you reached that place. Letting go of that future feels disorienting because part of your identity was wrapped around it. And chosen one, that doesn't make you unfaithful or ungrateful. It makes you human. Have you noticed how grief shows up quietly here? Not as sobbing despair, but as a dull ache, a sudden sadness when you see reminders, a heaviness when you realize time has moved on without that dream. That's sacred grief. It's not asking you to go backward, it's asking to be honored before you move forward. There is a lie that often follows redirection. If it was meant to end, I shouldn't miss it. But that's not how the soul works. Dreams can be real even when they're not meant to last. Love can be sincere even when it isn't meant to stay. You're not grieving because the redirection was wrong. You're grieving because what you hoped for was meaningful. Let me ask you gently, have you been trying to rush your healing so you don't feel unspiritual? Have you minimized your pain by telling yourself it could have been worse? That's not strength. That's self-abandonment. Heaven doesn't ask you to bypass grief. It invites you to walk through it with honesty and compassion. Chosen one, grief is not a sign that protection failed. It's a sign that your heart was fully engaged. And a heart that feels deeply is not a weakness. It's evidence of your calling. What you're releasing isn't foolishness. It's innocence, hope, effort, time. Those deserve acknowledgement. Even heaven allows seasons to be mourned. There is a reason silence often follows endings. It gives space for emotional truth to surface without pressure to perform resilience. In that quiet, something important happens. You begin to separate who you are from what you imagined. You reclaim yourself. And here's the gentle shift that comes next. As grief is honored, it softens. It stops clinging. It transforms from ache into wisdom. You don't forget the dream. You integrate it. You carry its lessons forward without carrying its weight. So if today your heart feels heavy for something that never came to be, don't judge it. Sit with it. Name it. Breathe through it. Ask yourself, what part of me was this dream trying to protect or fulfill? The answer will guide what comes next. Because chosen one, you are not being asked to erase the past, only to release it with love. And when grief is allowed to complete its work, it makes room for a future that doesn't replace what you lost, but honors it by being safer, steadier, and truer to who you are now. Chosen one, now that you've walked through recognition, redirection, and release, your spirit is ready to look forward again, not with urgency, but with steadiness. This next chapter does not rush toward you. It approaches calmly, like something that knows you'll recognize it by how safe it feels. You are no longer being asked to chase a future. You are being invited to build one. What's coming will not announce itself with chaos or intensity. It will not demand that you abandon your intuition to keep up. Instead, it will feel grounded, clear, almost surprisingly quiet. And at first, that quiet might confuse you, because you're used to interpreting pressure as purpose. But chosen one, peace is not the absence of destiny. It is the evidence of alignment. This new future is built differently. It doesn't require urgency to stay alive. It doesn't punish you for slowing down. It grows stronger the more present you are. When something is meant for you now, it won't provoke anxiety to hold your attention. It will meet you where you are and expand with you naturally. Let me ask you this. When you imagine moving forward now, do you feel tension or do you feel space? Do you feel like you must prove yourself or do you feel permission to arrive as you are? Those sensations are no longer secondary. They are your compass. Safety has become the sign. Chosen one, alignment in this season feels like consistency instead of intensity, like trust instead of adrenaline, like progress that doesn't cost your nervous system its peace. The future that once pulled you forward with force has been replaced by one that walks beside you. And that is not a downgrade. It is an upgrade in spiritual maturity. You may notice that opportunities now come with clarity instead of confusion. Relationships feel reciprocal instead of draining. Goals evolve without requiring self-betrayal. And when something isn't aligned, it reveals itself early, without drama. That's not coincidence. That's wisdom earned. This safer destiny will not look impressive to everyone else. It may even seem slower from the outside, but inside it feels solid, sustainable. You're no longer trying to survive your future. You're learning how to live inside it. And if part of you worries that choosing safety means choosing less, let that belief dissolve now. Safety is not smallness. Safety is the foundation that allows greatness to last. What you're building now won't collapse under pressure because it wasn't rushed into existence. So as you step forward, carry this truth with you. You don't have to prove your worth to deserve alignment. You don't have to hurry to be chosen. You already are. The future ahead of you will feel quieter, yes, but it will also feel truer. And as you begin to walk it, you'll realize something powerful. This time, you're not escaping danger. You're finally moving toward a destiny that knows how to hold you.